Hi everyone, my name is Shelby, and I'm a licensed substance abuse counselor at the Jackie Nitschke Center here in wonderful Green Bay, Wisconsin. This video is the third in a series that I will be presenting and will include discussions on what aids family members and loved ones can utilize to help them on a path to a healthier, more peaceful lifestyle. In my previous video, I discussed what roles family members played in addiction, as well as how the family experiences addiction. This video, however, will focus on how family members can help themselves in their own recovery when someone they love is struggling with substance abuse. The purpose of this video is to educate loved ones of those struggling with substance abuse and to help family members to explore what they can do for their own recovery, depending on their strengths, weaknesses, needs, and goals. As I did for the first video, I will continue to refer to alcohol as a drug, so that drug can be used as an all-encompassing term. The skill developments that I will discuss today are facing illusions, spirituality, setting healthy boundaries, and detaching with love. As I briefly discuss each one of these, I encourage anyone watching to think about how you can utilize these tools to better your own personal recovery. And as always, please remember that no matter what the situation is regarding your loved one's addiction, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. Though the skill developments are in list form, they are in no particular order of importance, and it is not necessary to master one skill in order to work on another. These are all important skill sets to further develop, and if one is neglected, it can lead to problems overall on the recovery path. An example of this could be if someone were working very hard at detaching, but has forgotten to develop their spirituality, they may struggle with a sense of loneliness, isolation, despair, or a lack of meaningfulness. Another is if someone were able to be successful at facing some difficult illusions in their life, it may lead to a greater truth about the problem. However, if one does not set healthy boundaries, they would not be able to escape the problem and would spend all of their time firefighting or in despair, feeling hopeless that anything could be different. Now that we have some visual tools, goals, and behaviors in mind, and thanks to the previous videos, the next step is to work on finding a better balance between care of ourselves and care of others. This balance is always changing, simply because life is always changing. But we want to learn the importance of finding and acting on that balance, situation by situation, day by day, hour by hour, and sometimes even minute after minute. This process is how we develop our healthy self. So on the subject of facing illusions, I want to discuss denial, that same defense mechanism that I've talked about continuously throughout these videos. It's highly likely that loved ones of those struggling with substance abuse are in denial in a very similar way as their addicted loved ones. Some of their denial may have decreased, including maybe coming to accept that their loved one has a substance abuse problem and that they themselves exhibit unhealthy or enabling behaviors. But what other denials might they still hold on to? Are they still accepting unacceptable behaviors? Maybe even making excuses for the chemical dependent? Do they believe they are helping their loved one when in reality they are enabling them? Maybe they think to themselves, if I can fix this, I can stop this disease. Here are 3 quick questions that you can ask yourself in any given situation. What is the truth about yourself, the truth about the other person, and the truth about your situation as a whole? These 3 questions can help you look at things from varying perspectives. Acceptance, which is the remedy to denial, is allowing oneself to come through their denial and see and accept these realities. This is an important step to moving forward in one's own life. However, accepting these truths will likely cause loved ones to experience the grief process because this may result in loss. Going back to the 3 questions, what does a loved one have to lose by accepting the truth of their situation? A loss of hopes, maybe dreams, maybe even the loss of some of their beliefs. let's take a look further into the grief process and how this relates to facing illusions. In 1969, psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross described the 5 stages of grief as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Similar to the skill sets I mentioned earlier, there's no set way to work through grief. It's often depicted as a cycle, and it's common for people to jump from one stage to the next and return again, or to even continuously cycle through the stages. It's different for everyone. The length varies from person to person, but it's important to allow yourself to experience these emotions. Regarding this grief process, family members are likely to experience any and all of these emotions as they allow reality to set in. This variety of feelings may arise in you at various times, maybe including multiple feelings at once, and it's beneficial to allow other people who understand you to support you as you journey through this process of coming to terms with reality and letting go of illusions. Loved ones of the chemical dependent may begin to feel better and maybe experience a greater level of acceptance, and then have what is called an acute grief episode emerge out of the blue. This is where Al-Anon can really come in handy for additional support, as members can offer how they coped with similar situations. Moving through this grief process and accepting the reality of self, others, and the situation gives loved ones a healthy foundation based in reality for making decisions and learning to take care of their self. Next, I'm going to discuss developing spirituality. And in this video, the context of spirituality is the concept of a power greater than ourselves, a concept that is central to 12-step programs. Spirituality is not religion, though it can be based on religious beliefs. Please do not let religion get in the way of a relationship with a higher power. It may be in any number of things, including nature, silence, or through feelings and experiences. It involves the recognition that we as loved ones are not the ultimate power in our lives, that we are not in full control of everything. It is the realization of what friends and family members can control and taking responsibility for that. This development of spirituality is personal and uniquely different for everyone. It is for each of us to decide our acceptance and understanding of this concept of a higher power. So you may be asking yourself, where do I start? In developing spirituality and a relationship with a higher power, it's important to try and be open and humble, as well as slow down and work to quiet one's mind. Practice being in the present and find a peaceful place in reality, or even experiment with meditational exercises to work towards silencing the mind. All of these will take time and practice, but the more one keeps at it, it will get easier, and the person will become more mindful. Other spirituality tools can include letting go of things loved ones cannot control, by way of prayer, meditation, a God box, or simply saying the Serenity Prayer or a mantra that calms them. Reading and studying materials can also be helpful, such as Bibles or spiritual texts, meditational books, or any book that encourages and deepens this mindset. Although this journey is a personal one, it's not one that is meant to be walked alone. So it's important to draw on strength from others, whether through friends, family, recovery support, or even spiritual direction from others. Spirituality is the very arena into which loved ones let go of things that they can't control, an arena into which they can place their trust and faith, not faith that things will happen as family members want them to, but faith that life will unfold as it will, and that loved ones can live with what happens. Daily practice of our spirituality can calm, help recenter, and clear the minds of those who utilize this. It can also be an anchor for loved ones in the storms that they may encounter, and it also helps them to create a lovely and strong self. The last portion of this video is going to discuss how to set healthy boundaries and how to detach with love. What detaching with love is not. It is not leaving. It is not ending. it is not divorcing, and it is not abandoning, though sometimes for safety and sanity reasons, it may include these. What detaching is about is developing skills that enable friends and family to see things more clearly and completely, have better self-awareness and self-care, and to respond, not react. We addressed some of the illusions to see things more clearly. Now let's look further into self-awareness, self-care, and what it means to respond and not react. So first, with detaching comes self-awareness and asking oneself, what entangles you to this other person? What is your tether? Are you trying to please them or keep them happy? Are you trying to avoid conflict? Do you not want them to be upset with you? Are you trying to control the outcome of a situation or the other person's behavior? Or are you perhaps afraid of what will happen if you can't please, manage, or control someone else? These are all things to think about and consider in order to become more self-aware. Do you remember the family roles that I discussed in my previous video? Going back to those roles, whichever role loved ones took on in their family of origin most likely contributes to what entangles them today. Loved ones may have also learned over-functioning in someone else's life because it was modeled by a major attachment figure. By becoming aware of the qualities that make loved ones vulnerable to losing themselves in someone else, they can use this self-awareness to prevent those tendencies from affecting their behaviors and emotions more than they were able to in the past. Please remember that this is not to bring up shame or judgment for those roles or behaviors in the past. These were coping skills that you utilized and learned for survival and to ensure some form of stability in your unique and chaotic environment. But with greater awareness of the tendencies that loved ones exhibit, they can then work to prevent or change these entanglements, allowing more time for self-care and self-growth. With that being said, I want to stress the importance of progress, not perfection. With self-awareness comes self-care, which is, and I'm not hyperbolizing here, crucial for anyone and everyone to practice. An easy thing for loved ones to ask themselves while monitoring their mental and physical well-being is something called HALT. With HALT, the person asks themselves, am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? If they are hungry, what do they need to fill themselves physically or emotionally? If they are angry, asking themselves what is causing them to feel like this, and explore how they can express it in a healthy way. If they are lonely, consider that they may be having difficulty connecting with others, and if that is the case, reach out and talk to someone. And finally, if they are tired, people are encouraged to ask themselves, when was the last time you took a break? Remember to breathe, slow down, and take some time to regroup. This is similar to a mental check-in, which can be done at any time and is simply the act of asking oneself, how am I doing today? And reflecting on that. Asking yourself how you're feeling mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if there are certain areas that may require more attention, exploring that more. Another self-care tool to utilize is something called the wellness wheel, which is exactly as it sounds. This wheel is made up of different areas of one's well-being, and with it, they can examine certain areas of their life where they may be satisfied or where they may be lacking. The components of the wellness wheel include spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environmental, and financial. With self-care, it's also helpful to learn how to say no and recognize that no can be a complete sentence. Just because the loved one can, doesn't mean the loved one has to. Remember to be kind to oneself, whether it's with self-talk or our own expectations of ourselves. Be patient and have grace. This is a journey that will take time. And also, please don't be afraid or ashamed to seek help from others, whether it's professional help, with friends and family, or even with pets. Moving on, I'm going to explain what it means to respond rather than react. With greater self-awareness in mind, it's important to quietly listen and observe what the other person is saying and doing. When communicating with others, we want to observe them as objectively as possible, removing our personal reactions in history so as to see them as if we were watching a show or a movie. Pause, slow down, and take it in, giving yourself time to process what is happening. When someone processes what they are observing and formulates a response, we look for one that is honest and reflects consideration of self as well as the other person, not just one or the other. Now let's talk about the last, possibly most intimidating discussion of this video, and that is setting healthy boundaries. What setting boundaries is not. It is not walls, it is not threats, and it is not ultimatums. What it is about is developing a clear sense of who we are as loved ones and where we stand, and acknowledging the same for the other person, as well as what loved ones will or will not tolerate, also known as establishing limits. Setting boundaries means that family members are able to listen to themselves, know their limits, and firmly assert these limits to themselves and other people. It's also helpful to note that setting boundaries will often include setting boundaries with yourself. In actuality, setting boundaries is a really healthy and friendly thing to do. It helps loved ones to know the parameters of their relationships and interactions. Children need boundaries and limits, and so do the adults with whom we all interact. And as I said earlier, it's very often that family members need to set limits with themselves as well. Daily, people are given the opportunities to practice setting and keeping their boundaries. Boundaries will naturally be tested and crossed, and will need to be reset and confirmed. So how does one set a healthy boundary? Number 1, listening to oneself. And number 2, interacting with the other person. It's very important to separate these two steps when setting a boundary, as the natural inclination is to react rather than respond. These two steps are the only steps that I've actually numbered in this video, and for good reason. Most other skills or tools have no real order and can be done together or in whatever order is necessary. However, when setting boundaries, it is critical that one centers oneself first and then interacts with another. If this isn't done, chances are the person may react with a boundary that they may be unable to follow through with, like an empty threat, or set no boundary at all over fear of hurting or losing the other person. Thoroughly consider the boundaries that can be set and ask if this is a boundary that can be kept. If the answer is no or met with uncertainty, chances are the boundary should be tweaked or revisited. It's also important to consider what the repercussions will be if that boundary is crossed or not respected, and take time to decide what the consequences will be. When it comes to listening to oneself, let's talk about what this actually looks like. Slow down and listen to yourself. Now is the time to quiet the other person's voice, even if you hear them clearly in your mind. Listen to each of these 4 parts of you that are giving you information to help you: physical, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual. Each of these areas can be a source of information to help you decide what boundary to set. It's easy to consider 1 or 2 of these parts and not listen to the others, but healthy boundaries are best set by listening to all 4 areas, even if all 4 areas don't agree. An example of this could be, your mind may tell you one thing, but your body is giving you another message. It is important to listen and respect all of these internal messages. They're being given to you for a reason. After listening to each part of oneself and weighing the messages against each other, loved ones can create an I statement, such as, I cannot afford to do that, or I can give you 2 hours each week to work on that. Then edit the I statement and make sure it is what you mean before you say it to the other person. It can be helpful to rehearse the I statement, either by saying it out loud or discussing it with someone supportive. Each of these steps is to help the loved one know what is true for them, to solidify what their boundary is, to feel more confident in saying it, to be more clear when saying it, and to be more prepared to follow through with this boundary after setting it. Remember, all of this is done before interacting with the person. Something else I'd like to add is that it's okay not to respond to a situation right away, and it might actually be better if you give yourself more time to think about and process this. Maybe telling the person, "I'm not sure at this moment, but I will get back to you," or something along those lines. Now that a loved one or family member is prepared to establish boundaries with another person, it's important to be honest, direct, and respectful while using I statements. Saying what is needed to be said and then stopping shows strength and cleanliness. So if the person feels themselves beginning to over-explain, stop. Granted, some clarification may be needed, but after that, be careful of any impulses to explain or defend the boundary that is being set. Learning when to stop is definitely an art form that will take practice. Recognizing when the point has been made, or if we feel ourselves being tugged away from our centeredness, may be a good indicator that it's time to walk away, hang up, or end the conversation with the point or boundary in a healthy way. So it's important to trust one's gut and tune in to when it is time to stop. It's important that once the limit has been set, that it's one that the loved one truly means and can live with. Otherwise, the loved one will be giving the chemical dependent the message that they can be persuaded to let go of a boundary that the loved one has decided was important to them. Remembering the reasons for the boundary can be an excellent way to hold strength when emotions or manipulation start moving in. Being able to follow through is often more important than the specific boundary set in the first place. In summation, the goal is to develop a healthy self. Codependent behaviors can have loved ones out of balance in their focus of self versus others. It's important not to get hung up on getting back to normal, because at this point, loved ones are creating a new normal for themselves, and finding that healthier balance is a constant mission. Friends and family members can only control their own actions, but in doing so, will find a new freedom and a new happiness. People in recovery tend to have healthier communication, greater self-awareness, and greater inner peace. Again, these changes will take time, but remember, it's progress, not perfection. So look at what changes you have initiated, may be working on, or may have already changed, and be proud of them. In closing, I would like to thank you again for joining me for this video. I hope that it was educational and answered some of the questions or concerns you may have had as a loved one of someone struggling with substance abuse. And as I always say, if there is one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it's that you are not alone, that you can reach out, and that there are others facing the exact same struggles as you. There is also no shame in asking for help. And remember, as the 3 C's of Al-Anon state, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. Be well, make good choices, and thank you again.